If you're mentally ill, you don't need a gun. Period. I also don't need some sanctimonious prat who's never paid a dime of my rent or groceries or other personal maintenance telling me what it is I do and don't need. But here you are, ain't you, matey? The proceeding was a dramatization of an actual conversation I once had with a guy regarding the subject of mentally ill people and firearms. Welcome back to Being the Marshmallow, Living and Coping with PTSD. I am, as always, Bob Wagner, and that was my trusty partners in educating you good people, Blimey and Pete. Today we're going to talk about personal arms, specifically guns, within the context of mental illness. Now, little quick full disclosure here. I personally am a gun owner. I believe that the Second Amendment does grant people the right to own guns, and I personally believe that the right to own guns is and should be a universal human right on the grounds that effective self-defense is and should be a universal human right, and having that be the case, it means that access to the best technology to do so, to defend yourself effectively, is and should be a universal human right. Okay? My personal opinion, if you disagree, that is certainly your prerogative, and I respect your right to disagree. But that's what we're going to be talking about today, and if you don't like guns, or if the idea of mentally ill people owning them really bothers you, then maybe this isn't the video for you to watch if you think you're going to get upset. It also might be a good video for you to watch because it may educate you a little bit. Now, before we get into this any further, I want to introduce you to a little friend of mine. Oh, dear God, he's taken off his kilt. Serious subject, and you're making dick jokes. Really? Brilliant. This is my personal home defense weapon. This is a Taurus PT-99 9mm semi-automatic pistol. For those of you who are unfamiliar with firearms technology, allow me to explain a few things before we get into this. First off, the magazine well is empty. You can see that right here. In fact, I'm kind of peeking through it right now. This means that the weapon is unloaded. This is the slide. The slide is locked back. This means that if there were bullets in the gun, the weapon could not discharge. This is the trigger. You will notice that I am keeping my fingers well away from it because we don't want to have our finger on the trigger unless we are ready to shoot, and I'm not ready to shoot right now. Furthermore, you always want to keep your firearm pointed in a safe direction. Right now, for those of you unfamiliar with the architecture of my home, the barrel, that's this part right here, this is where the bullets come out, is pointed in the direction of what amounts to a empty storage facility with nobody on the other side of it. So if by some weird cosmic twist a bullet were to suddenly fly out the barrel of this gun, nobody's going to get hurt, because we don't want to hurt people, either accidentally or on purpose, with our guns. We want to be safe with our guns, and we always want to treat a gun as the potentially dangerous piece of technology that it is, and we want to respect it so that nobody gets injured. I'm going to put this away, but I wanted to show that to you to prove a point. I'm mentally ill. This whole blog is about the fact that I'm mentally ill and the fact that I've been living with a severe mental illness since I was 12 years old. I'm also a firearm owner, okay? I'm also a gun owner. I've owned guns since I was about 22 years old, and I've owned them very specifically for home defense and hunting. I'm a hunter. I've fed my family a couple of winters with deer that I've shot. I like to target shoot because I find it very cathartic and very relaxing. And yet, in all that time, and understand, at the same time that all this is going on, I'm having daily rage flashes, daily hallucinations, daily panic attacks and dissociative episodes. I've got 4 suicide attempts under my belt. I have regular suicidal ideation. I think about hurting myself quite frequently. And yet, in the 32 years that I have been mentally ill, I've never criminally misused a gun. In the 22 years that I have owned guns, I've never criminally misused a gun. And the one time I actually had to use that specific weapon in home defense, the encounter ended, as the overwhelming majority of self-defense applications of firearms do, with no one getting injured. The weapon was not discharged. The individual who had broken into my home, ranting death threats with a deadly weapon in his hand, left my home with neither himself nor anyone in my household getting injured, and everybody went on about their business, okay? And yet there is this perception in American society, and indeed in society in general, that people like me don't need guns and we should not be allowed to own guns. And that really isn't right, okay? What you are saying is that a person with a medical condition should not have the right to effective self-defense, that we don't have the right to defend ourselves and our homes and our property and our family in the most effective means possible. You're saying that a person with a medical condition, their life and their safety and their property is less important than their neurologically typical neighbor down the street, okay? When you come to me and you say, Bob, you have PTSD, therefore you don't need a gun, what you are saying is, Bob, you have PTSD, therefore it matters less if you or your wife gets killed or raped or robbed or shot or in some other way victimized by violent crime than your neighbor up the block who doesn't have PTSD. You are saying that my life and the life of my family matters less. You can dress it up however you want, but that's really what's going on. You're saying it's less important for me to be safe, and millions of people like me. And given that a lot of guys like me, I myself am not, but given that a lot of guys like me are veterans and have served this country and put their lives on the line for this country, that's pretty sick, okay? As far as the now continuing on this thread, and this is going to be a multi-part post because it really is a very important subject. Continuing along these lines, people talk about, well, you don't need, excuse me, well, yeah, you kind of do, okay? The fact that you're mentally ill doesn't change the fact that we live in a world in which violent crime is a thing, all right? The fact that I have PTSD does not make me less subject to the attentions of the criminal element in society. If a mugger or a robber or a rapist or a housebreaker should target me or mine, it does not magically make me, or by extension anyone associated with me, immune from harm. PTSD does not grant me Superman's invulnerability. It does not grant me Wolverine's regenerative powers. It doesn't even grant me Batman's martial arts skill, okay? I'm a human being. I'm a regular human being. Mortal, bruisable, injurable, killable as anybody who doesn't have PTSD. And you know what? That's the case for all of us who are mentally ill, okay? We don't magically get immune from harm just because we have this, okay? So yes, we do need to defend ourselves. We have the same need as our neurologically typical friends and family and coworkers and neighbors. And to say that we don't is, well, frankly, it's kind of bigoted, and it kind of shows your bias, and it's kind of showing, as I mentioned already, that you think our lives and our safety matter less, all right? I myself, and understand, folks, I'm 6'2", about 220, I work out pretty regularly, I'm broad-shouldered, and let's be honest, I look like a Bigfoot and a werewolf had a kid, okay? And I personally have been in circumstances where I have been targeted by violent crime on multiple occasions. And I didn't have a gun, and I was obliged to defend myself through other means, and sometimes it worked out where I didn't get hurt, and sometimes it worked out where I did get hurt. I've got scars on my body from people trying to hurt me, and yeah, you know, I'm mentally ill. And I've been targeted multiple times. I'm a big, scary-looking dude, and I personally have been targeted multiple times by violent criminals. So there's that. So yeah, people like me do need guns. We need them for the same reason as everybody else does. So there's that. There is also the fact, and actually at this point, I'm going to wrap this up because I could continue to go on a rant, but I wanted to address this specific point about personal arms and personal arms ownership. The fact that you are mentally ill does not make you any less subject to the attentions of the criminal class. It does not make you any more capable of surviving such an encounter, and it does not strip you of your innate human right to be safe. Okay? And that's where we're going to wrap this up. Y'all have a great day.